Hello friends, in this session we will talk about the Mundell Fleming model. What exactly is Mundell Fleming model? It is a model which has been described as the dominant policy paradigm for studying open economy, monetary and fiscal policy. In 1990, Robert Mundell was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for his work in open economy macroeconomics, including this model. The Mundell Fleming model is closely related to the ISLM model. Both models include the interaction between the goods market and the money market. But the difference is that the ISLM model assumes a closed economy, while Mundell Fleming model assumes an open economy. The assumptions of the model are: the economy being studied is a small open economy with perfect capital mobility. The economy's interest rate is determined by the world's interest rate, that is, R is equal to R star, where R is the domestic interest rate and R star is the world interest rate. This model is useful for understanding the problems related to whether a country should adopt fixed or flexible exchange rate. This model also helps in understanding how the economy operates under a fixed exchange rate. Let's begin with the good market and the IS star curve. As stated earlier, that Mundell Fleming model is closely related to ISLM model, and hence the market for goods and services is like ISLM model, but it adds a new term for net exports. The equation representing goods market is Y is equal to C bracket Y minus T bracket closed plus I bracket R bracket closed plus G plus NX bracket small e bracket closed. This equation represents that Y is the aggregate income, which is the sum of consumption, which is C, investment, which is I, government expenditure, which is G, and net exports, which is NX. Y minus T in the equation shows the disposable income, whereas R is the interest rate on which investment inversely depends. Small e is the exchange rate and the net exports depend negatively on exchange rate. Mundell Fleming model assumes that the price levels at home and abroad are fixed, and hence the real exchange rate is proportional to the nominal exchange rate. This shows that when the domestic currency appreciates, foreign goods become cheaper compared to domestic goods, and this causes exports to fall and imports to rise. The two financial variables which affect expenditure on goods and services in the goods market equilibrium are the interest rate and the exchange rate. The assumption of perfect capital mobility helps in simplifying the situation. We get equation as Y is equal to C bracket Y minus T bracket closed plus I bracket R star bracket closed plus G plus NX bracket small e bracket closed. This equation can be called as IS star equation. The asterisk reminds us the assumption of constant interest rate at the world interest rate, which is R star. The IS curve slopes downward due to higher exchange rate, which reduces net exports, which in turn lowers aggregate income. Now we will have a look at the money market and the LM star curve. Money market in Mundell Fleming model is represented by an equation which is M divided by P equal to L, which is a function of R comma Y. In this equation, the demand for and supply of real money balances are equal. M divided by P represents the supply of real money balances, while L is the demand for real money balances. The demand for real balances depends on two things, that is the rate of interest, which is small r, and the income, capital Y. Rate of interest is negatively related to demand for real balances and income is positively related. The money supply, denoted by M, is an exogenous variable controlled by the central bank, and the price level P is also assumed to be exogenously fixed. So, the equation becomes M divided by P is equal to L, which is now a function of R star comma capital Y. The following diagram has two panels, panel A and panel B. Panel A shows the standard LM curve, which is derived by the equation M divided by P is equal to L bracket R comma Y bracket closed. Together with the horizontal line representing the world interest rate, which is R star, the intersection of these two curves determines the level of income, regardless of the exchange rate, and hence the LM star curve is vertical in panel B. Let us now derive the model. According to Mundell Fleming model, a small open economy with perfect capital mobility can be described by the two equations. Equation 1 is the IS star equation, which is y is equal to C into y minus t plus I into R star plus G plus nx into small e. Second equation is the Olymic star equation, which is M divided by P is equal to L, which is a function of R star and Y. The IS star equation shows the equilibrium state in goods market, while the LM star equation shows the equilibrium in money market. In these equations, some variables are exogenous variables and some are endogenous, like G, M, P and the world interest rate, which is R star, are exogenous variables, while variables like Y and small e are endogenous variable. Now, let us look at the equilibrium condition in the two markets. The equilibrium for the economy is established when the IS star curve and the LM star curve intersect with each other. The intersection shows the exchange rate and the level of income at which the goods market and the money market are in equilibrium. This graph shows the equilibrium condition in goods market and the money market. Both the curves are drawn with the assumption of interest rate constant at the world constant rate, the small open economy under the floating exchange rate. In floating exchange rate is determined by the market forces and is allowed to fluctuate in response to changing economic conditions. Under this system, exchange rate is adjusted to achieve simultaneous equilibrium in goods market and the money market. There are three types of policies. Number 1, fiscal policy. Number 2, monetary policy. And third, trade policy. The goal of the Mundell Fleming model is to understand the impact of policies on the equilibrium exchange rate. Now, I will discuss one by one the impact of these policies on exchange rate and interest rate. Let us now begin with fiscal policy. Let us suppose that government increases expenditure by increasing government purchases or by cutting taxes. When government adopts such expansionary fiscal policy, it increases expenditure that will shift the IS curve to right. The effect of fiscal policy is different on small open economy and on closed economy. The graph shows that increase in government purchases or a decrease in taxes shifts the IS curve to the right. This will raise the exchange rate but has no effect on income. In a closed economy, the expansionary fiscal policy raises income While in a small open economy having floating exchange rate, the expansionary fiscal policy will have no effect on income. The interest rate and the exchange rates are the reason behind this. In a closed economy, when there is increase in income, the interest rate rises because higher income increases the demand for money. But the case changes in small open economy because when the interest rate starts rising above the world interest rate, which is R star, capital quickly flows in from the abroad to earn higher returns, and this inflow of capital will again restore the world interest rate, which is R star. This will appreciate the domestic currency, which makes domestic goods expensive relative to foreign goods, resulting in reducing net exports. The fall in net exports is so great that it renders fiscal policy powerless to influence income. This case can be described by the money market equation, which is M divided by P equal to L bracket R comma Y bracket closed. In a small economy, R is determined at world interest rate, which is R star, and hence there is only one level of income to maintain, and this level of income does not change with change in fiscal policy. Thus, when the government increases spending or cuts taxes, the appreciation of the currency and the fall in net exports must be large enough to offset fully the expansionary effect of the policy on income. Now we will look at the monetary policy. Let us now assume that the central bank increases the money supply, and it is already assumed that the price level is fixed, and hence when there is increase in money supply, it will lead to increase in real money balance, and that is LM star will shift to right. When money supply increases, it will raise income and lower exchange rate. An increase in the money supply shifts the LM curve to the right, lowering the exchange rate and raising income. In a small open economy, the monetary policy influences income in different manner as it does in closed economy. Because in small open economy, the interest rate is determined by the world interest rate. The increase in the money supply will put downward pressure on domestic interest rate. Capital flows out of the economy because investor wants higher return. This outflow of capital will not allow the domestic interest rate from falling down below the world interest rate, which is R star. The capital outflow will increase the supply of domestic currency in the market for foreign exchange, which will cause domestic currency to depreciate in value. This will make domestic goods cheaper relative to foreign goods, which will increase the net exports and hence total income. Hence, in a small economy, monetary policy influences income and exchange rate, but there is no effect on interest rate. We will now look at trade policy. Now, let us suppose that the government decreases the demand for imported goods by imposing import quotas and tariffs. Now, we will study about the impact of trade policy on aggregate income and the exchange rate, and how does the economy reach its new equilibrium. The graph shows a tariff or an import quota shifts the net exports schedule in panel A to the right, and hence in panel B the IS star curve shifts to right, raising the exchange rate and leaving income unchanged. Now, let us look at the small open economy under fixed exchange rate. Let me introduce you to the system. Now, we will discuss about the second type of exchange rate, that is fixed exchange rate. Under this exchange rate, the central bank announces a value for the exchange rate and is ready to buy and sell the domestic currency to keep the exchange rate at its announced level. This was the case for the most of the world economies till 1950s and 1960s under the Bretton Woods system. Now we will analyze the impact of economic policies on an economy with a fixed exchange rate. The goal of keeping the fixed exchange rate is to keep the exchange rate at a predetermined level, and this is done by buying or selling the foreign currency at fixed exchange rate. In the graph, panel A, the equilibrium exchange rate initially exceeds the fixed level. Arbitrers will buy foreign currency in foreign exchange markets and sell it to the Fed, Central Bank of USA, for profit. This process automatically increases the money supply, shifting the LM curve to the right and lowering the exchange rate. In panel B, the equilibrium exchange rate is initially below the fixed level. Arbitrers will buy dollars in foreign exchange markets and use them to buy foreign currency from the Fed. This process automatically reduces the money supply, shifting the LM curve to the left and raising the exchange rate. Now let us have a look at fiscal policy under fixed exchange rate. Now we will discuss about the effect of fiscal policy on small open economy with a fixed exchange rate. Let us suppose that the government stimulates domestic spending by increasing government purchases or by cutting taxes, and consequently policy will shift the IS curve to the right, putting upward pressure on the market exchange rate. The graph shows that due to fiscal expansion, there is a shift in the IS curve to the right. To maintain the fixed exchange rate, the Fed must increase the money supply, thereby shifting LM curve to the right. Thus, in contrast to the case of floating exchange rates, under fixed exchange rates, a fiscal expansion raises income. Now, let us have a look at the monetary policy. Suppose that a central bank under fixed exchange rate tries to increase the money supply by buying bonds from the public. The monetary policy will shift the LM star curve to the right, lowering the exchange rate. Let us take an example. If the Fed tries to increase the money supply, it can do by buying bonds from the public. It will put downward pressure on the exchange rate. To maintain the fixed exchange rate, the money supply and the LM star curve must return to their initial position. Hence, under fixed exchange rates, normal monetary policy is ineffective. Now, let us have a look at the trade policy. Let us suppose that the government reduces imports by imposing an import quota or a tariff. This will shift the net exports to the right, and consequently there will be a shift in IS star curve to right. The graph shows that a tariff or an import quota shifts the IS star curve to the right. This induces an increase in the money supply to maintain the fixed exchange rate, and hence aggregate income increases. Friends, let us conclude today's session. We can summarize the effect of different policies on exchange rate with the help of a table. In the table, we can see under floating exchange rate, government's fiscal expansionary policy will raise the exchange rate but has no effect on income. Appreciation of the domestic currency will result in reduction of net exports. Under monetary expansion, an increase in income will lower the exchange rate, thus making domestic goods cheaper relative to foreign goods, which will lead to increase in net exports. If government puts a tariff or an import quota, the exchange rate raises and income and net exports remains unaffected. On the right side of the table, we can see that in contrast to the floating exchange rate, under fixed exchange rate, fiscal expansion raises income. Under fixed exchange rate, monetary policy is ineffective in influencing income, exchange rate and net exports. Under government's trade policy, the aggregate income rises and thus the net exports. Thank you.